Hi and welcome. You are listening to Get Into Your Skin podcast, where we talk anything and everything skincare and mental health. Each week, we'll explore inner and outer beauty at the intersection of a medically informed point of view and the curiosity of a skincare amateur. Speaking of which, I am one of your hosts, Isabel Rios, the representative of the lay audience for this hour. And today I pronounced it in Spanish, Isabel Rios. And I'm excited to introduce my co-host, Dr. Kumar and Isabel, a dermatology resident in Chicago. Hi.
Hi. Super excited.
Yeah, are you excited because we're going to hit one of the heavy hitters of dermatology today?
Yes,
Yeah.
Very excited.
Yeah, we're talking acne. And this is a good chance to remind, I know I've always plugged the Instagram and the podcast and tell you to rate, review, and subscribe, but we will also be uploading all the episode videos up onto YouTube. So you can watch us if our voices aren't enough and you want to look at us. And today is a great day because I'm not wearing any makeup, and so that will be on the internet, which is exciting.
Everyone is so nice on the internet. I think.
I'm just gonna get so many nice comments on the YouTube section. Like it'll be great.
I'm gonna be ready for it.
Yeah. And you asked if I got my second vaccine shot, and I was like, because I look like I'm dying, or
because you end up with a tetanus shot. Not too bad.
Yeah. Oh, and this is me drinking coffee through a metal straw because I don't want to stain my teeth. No, the internet's gonna comment on that now. Okay, all right. So let's start with the very basics. And we're gonna talk about acne today, and then for our next episode, we want to interview an acne expert. No, I'm kidding. We're gonna talk to my sister because she's dealt with acne for like over 10, 15 years of her life. I don't know if she would like to be called an acne expert, but we're going to talk to someone who's had to deal with it, and we'll talk about those experiences. The dermatology side, that's my cat playing with the blinds. And she knows the patient side, so we're going to talk about that. But for now, why don't you tell us what is acne?
Yeah, what is acne? I think I'll try to sum it up without being too boring, because I think everybody knows or has a personal or a secondhand experience with acne that is better than any medical description. But in general, acne has a bunch of factors that go into it. You end up seeing these little pustules or comedones on the face, but what's happening behind the scenes is that there is an increased skin accumulation in your pore, where there's a hair follicle and a sweat gland. And along with that increased skin production and accumulation, you have increased quality of sweat that promotes acne. And that sweat is stimulated by androgens, most likely testosterone or DHT, which is a much stronger form of testosterone in our bodies, which has a lot more involvement with acne than testosterone, actually. And along with the androgens, you also have IGF or growth factors, which stimulate more sweat production and the quality of sweat that comes out. And that creates this sticky network of skin that plugs up the pore and gives you a comedone. And behind that, P. acnes loves to hang out and eat and grow. And that leads to inflammation, giving you pustules or inflammatory acne that we commonly see. And so that's the basics of acne. Yeah.
What leads? I'm trying to process all of it. So I got up until the point where there's like the buildup of skin and all the hormones that you said, and then something else that you said like grows more. What was it?
Yeah, that's P. acnes. So the acnes bacteria.
Okay.
Propionibacterium acnes. And so P. acnes or C. acnes now is a short form of it. And that is the bacteria that lives inside those clogged pores and that eats and grows, and then it releases inflammatory factors that bring in more inflammation. And then you get this pus bump, and then that pus bump can break, and all of that contents of that clogged, gunky pore can grow to the rest of your skin and then give you inflammation. Then you get that redness around those pus bumps.
Okay. So it's a combination. Okay, I'm gonna try and sum.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
combination of like sweat, skin buildup with a bacteria that leads to inflammation, and then you get the physical manifestation of it, like the
Yes.
visible. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And every part of that will give you a different manifestation of acne. So if you don't have as much inflammation, you can still have comedones. So the blackheads and the whiteheads, those are open and closed comedones respectively. And then once the acnes and P. acnes bacteria is involved, it's eating, it's causing damage, it's releasing inflammation, causing inflammation. That's where you get more of the redness and the pustules that are formed.
What is the pimple in that? Is that coma?
The pimple itself is a pustule. I think
A pustule.
classically a
Okay.
pimple, the white pus-filled bump.
Right. Okay. So in my brain, what I picture when I see acne is the pimples and the redness. But are there other forms of?
Yeah, it's a good question. So inflammatory acne. So acne can be broken down, can be. Now it's moving away from this, but it's a very simplified version that people like to use online, is that it can be broken down into a few categories. Open comedones, which are the open pores, they look like blackheads, or they're called blackheads. The closed comedones, they are little bumps, but they're not the pustules. They're just bumps on the skin. And those are the closed comedones. And then you have inflammatory acne or pustular acne, where you have the pustules and around it you have the redness. And that is, I think, what you're describing, where you have the pimples and the zits and you have a lot of redness and irritation. And that shows up more on lighter skin. And the other types of comedones show up more on darker skin, classically, when you look from far away, because you can't see redness as well on darker skin.
Okay.
But we can all get all of them. And then the last category, which is awful, is cystic acne.
Okay.
Cystic acne is rough. Cystic acne you see where there's these big golf ball acne bumps inside the skin, and they're coming out, and it looks like big worlds are being formed.
That's the Dr. Pimple Popper.
It's along
level.
those lines. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah. That level of acne.
Is it acne or cystic acne when they actually have to use like is that scalpel? Is that like the little knife to take it out?
So what Dr. Pimple Popper, a lot of what she's taken out, they aren't, that's not acne, it's cysts. A similar name, but it's just a different form. The cysts where they have to use a scalpel is that there's no opening, or there's a small opening to the surface. And yes, it is like acne, where it's just a big collection of pus and junk somewhere else on your body.
Okay. I was going to say I'm a big fan, but I'm really not. It's more like I can't look away. But Dr. Pimple Popper has a TikTok now. You can spend hours on there just watching like 30 to 1 minute clips of just gunk coming out. So it's a misnomer then. She's not popping pimples. She's, for the most part.
I haven't seen a lot of her videos. I think some probably she's popping pimples and some she's taking out cysts. And at that point, they're pretty similar.
Okay. And then the other part is, so you said like the blackheads is a form of acne, which I guess I'm not sure if I'm picturing correctly, but there's the blackheads that you get, and now it's very like common to have, or very popular to have, these like black plastic face masks that you put on. They stick to your face, and then you like take them off, and they're supposed to like extract these things, or these little strips. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're talking about. And now there's also videos circulating around about how a lot of those are fake, and people draw on black dots onto tape, and then they put it on their face, and then they just pull it off. And so I don't know what's real and what's not nowadays. When you look online, it's not easy to just pull out a bunch of gunk from pores with a piece of tape. So I think a lot of it is pretty fake. But yes, you can extract blackheads. You can push down. You can open up that pore and squeeze out some of the gunk. There's comedone extractors. Those are real. And so that is, and if maybe some of these tapes work and maybe they really grab deep down. But that's what you are classically thinking of. Yes. Blackheads.
Okay. I've 100% tried the mask, and they don't take out anything black. They take out like little white thingies. But if you look really closely at it, what I saw is that it mostly rips out like tiny hair. So you see a
Mhm.
lot of stuff on it, but I don't think it's anything that's really being extracted.
Yeah, I don't think
It's
so
more
either.
like, okay, you just put on this thing that becomes very sticky and then you pull it off. So of course it's gonna rip out like the little tiny hairs. I found they're actually kind of abrasive to the skin just
Mhm.
because they actually tug at it. Not the strips. I'm talking about these really Instagram, like very satisfying looking mask that you put on this black gunk and then you wait 20 minutes, it dries, and then it just pulls at your skin. But they are the idea of them are actually very attractive, I will say.
Yeah, I think they are very good at marketing those things, and they look very cool and very Instagram worthy. But I don't know how effective they are, and they could be abrasive. Anything like you said, anything that you're pulling on your skin, you're pulling hair off, you're pulling skin off. It's stripping the skin of a lot of natural barrier protection, a lot of development that's been happening. That's natural. You're taking a big strip and you're just pulling it away, and it could hurt and it can cause some damage deeper down.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that I've seen are these little suction tubes, thingies, whatever. That you kind of like press on your skin, and then they're supposed to like suck out.
I have seen
Are
those.
those real?
Those look cool. I've never used one, but I would imagine that they're real and they could work
I mean,
theoretically.
they cost a lot, so I'm hoping they do something.
I yeah, I'm hoping so too. I'm hoping so too. Now, I think those are again Instagrammy, really nice to look at, and they pull out that plug, that bunch of dead skin and the sweat and everything that's formed in there. But that doesn't solve the root issue, which is the ongoing inflammation and the sweat production, the quality of the sweat, the hormones involved. That's just going to make another plug and make another acne for it.
Right. I was thinking like, okay, maybe it's an aesthetic thing where you get rid of the blackheads for a little while, but then they're just gonna come back again. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty much cleaning out a well that's gonna fill back up with sludge. And so maybe it's
Okay.
good for a few days, but after that, and it looks great. Looks cool.
They do
Looks
look.
very
I've
satisfying.
I've been very tempted to get it, but I haven't yet.
How much does it run?
I've seen some like cheaper ones for like $80. Maybe when I get my unemployment check. It's been weeks. Okay.
I wonder if
No,
it'd be
I
fun to
wouldn't
do
do
on
that.
yourself, or would you do it on somebody else?
I
What
love
would
to
be
do
more
it on other
satisfying?
people. Like I mentioned, my sister has pimples, and I'm always like, let me. Okay, is it bad to pop pimples?
Yes. Yes.
Why?
Unequivocally, yes. So when we have pimples, it is near the surface of the skin. But it like an iceberg, there is a lot going on underneath the surface. So when you pop them, not only are you getting rid of what's on the surface above the layer of water, if we're going with iceberg metaphor, but you're also popping what's underneath. And that is going to fracture and it's going to spread, and that inflammation is going to spread underneath the skin and ultimately give you more acne down the line.
Okay. So I don't have acne, but I get pimples like any other mortal, I'm thinking. But okay, so they sell these, and these aren't expensive tools. They're just like little loops that you kind
Mhm.
of like press around the pimple. Are those bad as well? Like, is it
Yeah, that's a good question. So there's comedone extractors, which I believe is what you're referring
okay?
to, and if you squeeze the acne out in a very careful manner, you can extract it like the suctioning. You can extract
Mm,
that pimple without causing damage underneath because you're just pulling it out. I think when you pop it, you're applying downward pressure. It's very traumatic, and so you're bursting a balloon and it's going everywhere. Versus opening the top of the balloon and just slowly squeezing everything out of the balloon.
okay. Okay. I mean, I literally did it. It didn't work. It made it worse.
Which
But does
one?
it actually?
The comedone extractor?
Yeah. I mean, it like got rid of the pimple, but it made like a red splotch, I guess.
Hmm.
But does it actually give you scars? Because that's what I hear a lot to tell people, like, don't pop your pimples, like it'll give you scars. Like, is that true?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think when we talk about scars, we have to be careful in how we define a scar. A scar is a medical scar is a formation of extra collagen underneath the skin, and you're reforming a defective or broken area and you're filling it up. Oftentimes, when we talk about scars in terms of acne, especially online or social media, it is hyperpigmentation, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And now that's not a scar because there's not this excessive collagen formation underneath where it's repairing the area. Post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation is anytime there's irritation, especially in darker skin, almost exclusively in darker skin clinically, you are going to have hyperpigmentation because the melanocytes or the color producing cells of the skin are getting freaked out. They see inflammation and they say, uh-oh, something's wrong. Let's do our part by creating more color because that's how we protect the skin. And so in that area where you pop a pimple and the inflammation spreads, it's going to tell all of the melanocytes around the area, say, hey, look, there's a problem here. There's a red flag. Make as much melanin as you can to protect us. And that's where you get the post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation. And unfortunately, that lasts months. For me, I think darker skin types last 6 to 9 months in times. And that's worse than the acne pimple in most skin of color patients.
Okay. And so they're not forever, but they last a long time.
Absolutely. They're not forever, but they last a long time versus scars, which pretty much last forever.
Right. And they do laser treatments for that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do they work?
You could do laser treatments. They do work. It's expensive and it's difficult to pinpoint to specific spots. It's much easier to laser the entire face, and lasers produce wonderful, wonderful effects. But to do individual spots, it might not be worth it because one, you're going to get more if you haven't solved the acne, and that is the biggest issue. And also one of the most difficult issues to tell somebody, it's like, look, I know you got this scarring, right? The hyperpigmentation on your face. We can't do anything about that very easily or affordably, but I'm going to prevent this in the future. That's my goal as your partner, to prevent this. But preventing acne is much more difficult to do and to convince a person to do rather than get rid of what is on their face right now.
Okay. That was my next question, is how do you treat acne, or why is it so hard to treat? I feel like most people that I speak to that have had acne still have it. And I'm in my late 20s. I guess I don't see a lot of, like, I was gonna say adults, but like people over 40 or 50 with acne. But it does seem like it's not just like something that you can treat and get rid of, when it shows up.
Yeah, absolutely. So acne, like anything else that we discuss, is heavily inflammatory based, and inflammation can come from plenty of stress in your life. And the biggest example for acne is puberty. And you have hormones, raging hormones that are all over the place. And it's not just an increase in testosterone, but it's also an imbalance in the hormones that you have because women are getting plenty of acne, not just during puberty, but later in life. And those hormones stimulate the sweat production, like we talked about, DHT and testosterone specifically. And when that increases during puberty, you have increased acne formation during puberty. Before puberty, you don't have much acne. Then you have diet that's involved, stress of work, our environment, rubbing your face, anything can go into acne. So everybody's
Rubbing your face?
rubbing your face, like we talked about, when you pop one pimple, it can cause more inflammation. Some people use alcohol on their face. People over exfoliate their face. Any type of irritation, that is going to increase inflammation that's going on deep down. And so for every single person, it's hard to control all of those factors because we all have different lives, different ticks, different backgrounds, and different environments that we're exposed to every day, and different diets, right? We would love to control people's diets, but that is one of the hardest things to do, especially if you are in food deserts, or if you are socioeconomically challenged, where you cannot eat at Whole Foods every single day, or you don't like that food because you haven't been raised around it. It takes a lot. And so we'll definitely talk about diet, but overall, you have so many factors, and that's what makes it different for every single person. And the journey is not a one size fits all. It needs to be curated to your lifestyle. And so there's plenty of companies that are popping up for skincare and general acne treatment, which is great because it gives access to people who cannot get it otherwise, who cannot make it to a doctor or a medical provider that does dermatology. But at the same time, it is a disservice because it tells us all we're in one of four boxes: dry, or moist, or combination skin, or oily, and it gives you these categories and just puts you there. And we know in every single field in medicine and outside of medicine, you never get the full benefit if you're put into a box.
Right. I think there's been um, a increasing popularity with these services, and I'm the first one to fall for the marketing, where you answer a series of questions and then they customize a product for you. I did it for hair products, where you're like, you put in the zip code where you live to see if there's air pollution. You talk about, I'm vegetarian. You talk about your age, how long it is, and then they give you this shampoo bottle, and they're like, here's, for you. Um, and I know there's the same thing for, I mean, I've done it for like makeup, and then there's for skincare. But yeah, it's hard to just give a product, like you said, like, oh, you're one of these four categories based on these things that you answered, and then not be able to address any of the other things. It's like, how much effectiveness can this product have, like, versus everything else, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big proponent of online medicine, where we're going towards. I think that is the future. I think that is incredible, to give people that access from their home, because it's difficult to go see a provider, especially in the middle of the day if you're working. So I think that's wonderful. I don't think we are at the point yet where we can do that successfully for most people. I think a lot of people will be helped by very basic products because that's all they need. But if acne or another condition is a problem in your life and it gives you stress, you deserve to go see a provider and get some help for not just the physical products, but also therapy, also because seeing any type of provider is a form of therapy, and it should be. But also, this is going to develop. This is going to develop. Your acne is going to develop as you go through life, and you want somebody with you to handle that and to see how it reacts to different parts of your life and to help you adjust. And it's like a counselor or an advisor or consultant in any other walk of life, you would get a professional. And I think that does a lot of people a good service for more than just the acne. But that being said, if you're able to get a lotion online, you always see the memes of guys have no skincare products and they come out with amazing skin. If you're able to do that, good for you. Great. You don't need to go
Oh my
see
god, I
somebody.
went out with this guy from Bumble who literally said he uses a bar of soap for his face.
It hurts you to
I was
hear.
like,
Did he have good skin?
he had fine skin. Like, he wasn't glowing, but he didn't have
Yeah.
like anything that I was, shocked. It was kind of like, excuse me, I have like 6 steps in my skincare routine. But I mean, he was white and he doesn't use SPF ever. So, we'll talk to him in 20 years and see how it's
Right.
doing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a long game. And, we're talking about acne during puberty and while we're young, but the rate of acne in 40-year-olds and older in women is 12% now.
Okay.
And it's increasing every year. It is increasing the rate of acne in older women and older men, in post-menopausal, premenopausal, post-puberty, during puberty, because acne is also related to anxiety, right? And so when you have a guy with bar of soap and he's not worried at all, and he's not getting acne. I mean, he has no anxiety about his skin, and he does barely anything to it, and there's no irritation, and he's come to a homeostasis with the skin where it is balanced. It is not incredible, but it's not bad either. It's just nice and easy.
I'm just having this, like, not to take into my dating life, but I was like, I kind of ended things because he wasn't like very complicated, just
Mhm.
kind of like basic emotions.
Yeah, and
And
his skin reflected that.
oh, he didn't like get my neuroticism because he just had a good life
Right.
with
Yeah.
no stress. Okay. I think we're gonna talk more about the anxiety part, but I did want to ask, is there any genetic factor to it? I just think it's so wild that my sister and I basically, had the same upbringing and the same diet for the longest time, and the same, just a lot of very similar things. And then I mean, I get pimples here and there, but like not the same. And I think I don't think she's that much more stressed than I am. Like, I think, so I'm just thinking there must be something in her like DNA that is different from me. Like, she gets acne, I get depression. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, maybe that's what you each get from your genetics. That's a great question. And there is a genetic component. Like any other disease, especially chronic diseases, there's absolutely a genetic component. We see more acne within twins, within family members than we do random people. And so there's absolutely a genetic component. How that manifests is very difficult to pinpoint. How it manifests in you versus her, what gene there is, nobody's looked at that. I think it's extra expensive to do so. Maybe in the future when we have all this genome mapping, but right now it's so expensive to do so, and it's not quite worth it, because even if we pinpoint that, it still doesn't change what we need to do in order to help your acne or help her acne, right? We still need to address the same things: environment, stress, food. And it's so difficult to compare stress. I know that's not what you're trying to do, but maybe the stress is different. One person can have a lot of emotional stress, one person can have a lot of psychological stress, and maybe you have the same diet, but one person snacks at midnight on a pack of Doritos, and that could be the difference. And so that all of those factors, it's so difficult to control for. And I honestly think that we are going in the wrong direction in terms of treating it oftentimes, and especially in social media, especially with these popular skincare brands, is we go for more is more. We go with, okay, a 6-step routine isn't fixing your acne, try a 10-step routine or try a 12-step routine. In reality, we need stronger products, and we have them. We're just going away from using them because it is easier and it is more lucrative to sell you 12 steps that are useless than to sell you 2 steps that can really work. And I think it's oftentimes like exercise. When you have the shake weight or you have that vibrating belt, those are all
Yeah.
workout tools,
Wait, when
right?
I
That
was like
cost money.
14, I ordered a shake weight.
Did you? Yeah. A lot of these skincare products now are like a shake weight. It in
It
theory,
tracks.
okay, it could work. In theory, it could
No,
work,
it doesn't work.
but it really doesn't. It really
Yeah.
does. And we all know to get in shape, you've got to lose weight by nutrition and exercise. And there's gimmicks out there. Maybe a shake weight worked for one person, but for the
It's
majority
the
of
most
people,
boring. It's diet and exercise. And you're like, but what about this?
right, right. It is not
Yeah.
fun. It is not
Yeah.
fun. And skincare, I believe, should be fun. And I think a lot of people will agree with me on that. But we got to find a way where it's fun and also healthy, where we're not just having fun to our own detriment and giving ourselves more anxiety because we're not fixing anything. And so there's got to be a combination of the two.
Yeah. And I think, we talked about retinol, tretinoid, when we answered Michael's question about his back knee.
Yeah.
And that one, I had heard about retinol on the web, being touted as this like magic thing that did everything, anti-aging, fixing acne, everything. So of course I started buying it, and they sell like these oils and serums that are retinol, and I think the cheapest one I had was like $60, tiny bottle. And then through you and Nuria, I found out that you can get like a prescription one. It was like $7. And it's
Yeah.
like stronger.
Oh,
So it's
incredibly
just
stronger.
right. So it's just wild to me that because a lot of people don't know that you can get a prescription one, it's, I guess a generic, and that's why it's cheaper. Or maybe because I had health insurance, we'll find out what happens when I try to get it. But that there are these very expensive products being sold by like these, beauty companies that just don't do the same thing. And just because they have some percentage of retinol in it, they can charge $80 a tiny, tiny bottle.
Yeah, absolutely. And it preys on consumerism and marketing and insecurities and a lot of societal pressures to look good. And you hear retinol's great, and so you try to find one that's expensive. And I don't blame you. But you're right. There's retinol, and then there's, let's say, tretinoin and retinoic acids. Those are prescription. They are at least 20 times stronger, and much more than that often. Granted, you have more side effects with anything that is stronger, and the side effects could be most likely irritation, dryness, redness, peeling,
The retinol
which
uglies.
the retinol uglies. Nobody wants the retinol uglies. But if I were to tell you that you can do a shake weight or you can go do squats, the squats are going to make you sore. It's going to make you tired. You're not going to feel great when you do it, but everybody knows you're going to look much better afterwards. It took us a long time to accept it, and I don't think shake weights really sell anymore, but there's always a period of time where beauty that comes in and the marketing comes in and it tries to sell you and all this. And I really believe and I hope that we're going to get through all this and get to the other side where skincare is going to start becoming more simplified, more focused on the things that actually work. And we're going to accept that a few weeks of retinoid uglies or soreness from squats is so much better than spending thousands of dollars on something that doesn't work.
Yeah, I started using retinol on my neck recently, and I've had like those blotches, so I have to like deal with that. But yeah, I'm like, okay, I'll have a young neck.
Mhm.
Okay. My next question, like, I'm gonna try to explain it. Um, so other than aesthetics, is acne a health issue? Like, I understand, not saying aesthetics is like, oh, if you're worried about your acne, you're this vain person. Like, I get that it's a really difficult thing to have, but does it signal that there's something? I think I just answered my own question because we talked about stress. But other than saying like, okay, there's a lot of things going on, like, does it actually harm your body in any way? Like, does it say, hey, you have, like, do you have to treat it just because of the psychological effects of having it, or is it signaling that there's something else in your body, like that's
Yeah.
inflammation?
Yeah. Great question. Great question. Acne itself is not a signal of an underlying disease. 99.99% of the time, it is okay. It is mostly cosmetic, it is mostly a nuisance, and it can be very harmful in a person's day to day life, but it's not going to kill you. There are cases like acne fulminans. There's relation to other processes with sweat glands like hidradenitis, like we've talked about before, cysts. Those are all not quite acne, but they're related. That can be much more painful. They're much more inhibiting of your life, and those need to be taken seriously, and they should be medical problems. And that is still a work in progress. Oftentimes, there are still really harmful diseases that don't have a medical code, that aren't covered by insurance, and that we need to address. But acne in itself is largely cosmetic. That being said, and this is my motto, and we've talked about it, and you already said you answered it yourself, is that it is a signal of some type of systemic inflammation. Your body is stressed out. What is stressing you out? I do not know. It could be hormones, it could be the bullying at school, but there's something that is going on inside your body. And a lot of times that's not under your control. Well, there has been studies that looked at pygmy tribes that have absolutely no acne because they do not eat the Western diet. There's Eastern diets which have been slowly converted into Western diets, especially in China, now that they're becoming more Westernized, other parts of Southeast Asia. And as they convert to more Western diets, that rate of acne increases. And so more and more, we are realizing that the amount of growth hormone or growth factors is related to the hyperglycemic and the high fat diets that we have in Western diets.
Is that not to poo-poo that study, but I hate that word. But I guess, is that the main evidence for saying that diet affects acne? Because in my, social science, blah, blah brain, I'm thinking, well, that's not really an experiment, right? Like, that's not the only thing that's different. That's not the only thing that's changing. Like, with food comes a lot of other things. I mean, I'm not going to say that, Marvel movies cause acne, but there's a shift in the society, right? That's not just health. So, and I know how hard it is to run experiments with these things, but is that the main evidence for saying, food causes acne?
Yeah, that's a great question too. All of the evidence linking acne to food is very weak. I think your sociology brain is right, is that it is very difficult to prove this, because you cannot take 20 kids and give 10 of them all chips and fries and give the
I mean,
other
you
10
can.
healthy food. You can. You'd
The
probably,
IRB would, yeah.
yeah, the IRB would be canceled, or you'd have to return the kids to the orphanage. I don't think you would be allowed to do that. I don't know in what situation somebody can get away with that, because it is poor ethics, right? And so based on that, we have to go with larger general studies. And so if we see trends happening, and less so studies, but more anecdotal trends in large populations. So if we see a lot of people switching to the Western diet and we see an increase in hormones, which we can track, and we do know is related to Western diets, then it is reasonable to say that that is contributing to our acne, right? There's also studies on chocolate, pretty weak. There's a study on milk, which is related to IGF, growth factors, growth hormones, and high glycemic products. So very, very high sugar, fake sugar, fats that you relate to McDonald's. All that stuff, junk in, junk out. That
Right.
you're going to put that stuff in your body, you're going to get something out.
My mom listened to her last episode and was like, I don't know if you should say McDonald's. You could get sued. Like,
I know.
McDonald's does not care.
Yeah.
But
I think they know. They don't care.
No. I mean, yeah, no. If the guy from Super Size Me didn't get sued, I'm sure it's fine. But okay, so those studies do show, a causal relationship. The ones with
yes, they show us. So causal would be based on how the study is conducted. And again, we cannot do a double-blind experiment where we put one group in a really bad food groups and one group in really good food groups. So most of them, these are retrospective, they're observational studies. And so causal relationships cannot be inferred easily. So, but there are strong correlations between these foods. And more so than just one or two studies showing this, it's over and over again. And nobody has shown the opposite. And so eventually it starts to mount the evidence. There's a way to look at evidence where it's not just one study where you look at the quality, but the more and more studies you have, it starts building together.
Yeah, I'm still skeptical. I'm still skeptical because, like I said, those large, societal changes, you turn into a Western diet, but the lifestyle also changes. And that could also be related to hormone production, I think, or just, people used to farm. Now they work at an office. There's just, or, now like the idea of individualism from the West is spreading to like other parts of the world, like different
anxiety
stresses
with it.
Right. Yeah. So that's part of it. And then there's the other one, and we talked about this off air, but there's the idea of, we live in a diet culture, fat phobic society where we have these ideas that some foods are good, some foods are bad.
Yeah.
And you don't eat in a vacuum, right? So when I eat McDonald's, I feel shame, or there's a part of me in my brain that thinks this is bad, or, sugar, whatever. For the most part, like some people are really just enlightened and like do not care. They can eat in moderation and they just go about their days without stressing. But for like 75% of women, and the rate is increasing for men, is when you're eating something, whether it's supposed to be good or bad, and that can cause you stress. Like when I eat an Oreo, when I'm worried about it being bad for me, I'm going to feel stressed out versus if I just eat an Oreo in a vacuum. So that could also be causing stress, that the idea that, I'm eating something that's bad for me. Now I'm stressed out because I ate. Now I feel guilty. Now I feel shame. And then there's the other thing that we talked about, and that's the nocebo effect, which is the opposite of the placebo effect, in which, you take a sugar pill, you think it's going to give you more energy, you feel more energized. The nocebo effect is you think, I eat cheese and it's going to make me feel bad. So when I eat cheese, I do feel bad. And, you can do tests where you find out if you're allergic to food. I'm not saying people with peanut allergies should be shoving peanuts in their face, but the rise of like gluten-free, people thinking they have celiac, like you can test for celiac. You can test for it. I don't think it's DNA. I think it's some other hormone, but you can test for it, and like a doctor can do that for you. But just people eating gluten thinking, okay, it's going to hurt my stomach, it's going to give me acne. When they do eat it, they do get these reactions because the brain is like really powerful. So I'm obviously it's really hard to decide a study, like you said, where it's double blind, where the people don't carry these ideas about chocolate or cheese or milk or whatever when they eat it. But I do think I'm still very skeptical at it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you deserve to be. And those are all really good points. And I think there's practitioners who go about this in two separate ways. And there's people who go about this in two separate ways. Is that if it's not something you believe in, and if it doesn't worry you, then that's not the lifestyle habit that you have to change. There's other things you could do, right? Your cleansing, the ingredients that you use on your skin, maybe hydration, all that stuff we can discuss, right? Lack of not popping the pimples, not exfoliating too much, all that stuff is great. And then there's people that think that, okay, I want to change my diet. That is something that I can control. What can I eat? Because I know that eating has something to do with it. And that is what they believe. And so, like you said, if that is what you care about, or if you don't have shame around it, or you do have shame around it and you want to change it, then it's a great place to start, is those few food groups. If you want to change something in your diet. So chocolate, milk, whey protein concentrate related to those milk, hormones, and high glycemic products. That's a good place to start. And it's a really good point that you said the shame is around it, and people who eat this kind of stuff, because you used to see some people eat terrible food and they have great skin. So it's not for everybody, right? And I'll tell you about the story. My father, he had cancer, and he's a cancer survivor, and he had this very rare form of cancer, and he lives a very, very healthy life. He's almost healthier than I am, and he's much older than I am. And he smoked a few cigarettes for a few years in his 20s, and he was so scared when he got cancer, and he looked, like most people do, at their past and looked at what mistakes they made and what risks that they put themselves at. And he said, is this because of cancer? And he asked me that over the phone, and I told him that he cannot blame himself for something that he did when he was 20 years old. And there's plenty of things that we all do that we regret. And he's almost 70 now, and he had cancer. And there are people who smoke cigarettes for 80 years and they will not have lung cancer. And he had a cancer that was very, very far from his lungs. It's near his bladder. And so I always said, if you are not stressed about smoking cigarettes and you just smoke and I do not say this in a professional way, I'll reiterate that part. But if you are not stressed about smoking cigarettes and you smoke cigarettes your whole life, maybe you don't get cancer, because that decreases the amount of overall stress you have, and you don't have any shame behind the cancer. I don't know, but that is a very interesting theory, and I think about that all the time, and it lines up with what you're saying, right? If you are eating these foods and you have shame about it and you're stressed and you're eating them because you are stressed, oftentimes that is a go-to for you because you're not in a vacuum. Then yes, it all goes together, because then, okay, we keep finding people eating fatty, bad food when they're already stressed out. Then it all makes sense, right? You can still.
But you called it bad.
I did call it bad. I did call it bad. You're right. And when I say bad, I will say that, okay, acne is hard to prove, but there are some of these foods that are proven to cause inflammation in our vessels, atherosclerosis, hypertension. Again, could be stress related, but more and more so, it is easier to prove for cardiothoracic events that there is food relation to them and diet relation to them. So, given that all of our skin is connected by blood and everything else is connected by with inflammation, it's reasonable. And I'm really big in the camp of inflammation reduction for your whole body, for your skin. It's reasonable to say that if we're going to call somebody the bad guy, it could be those foods, right? And
Right.
I'm not
And
saying all of them,
yeah.
but
Yeah. And I'm not saying like you can survive on all these, processed foods. You don't need to eat vegetables. But I do think there's also a lot of research on dieting where once you say, okay, this food group is restricted, that's the one that
Mhm.
calls you like a siren, right? It's the typical like, don't think of a polar bear, and then what are you thinking about now? Like a polar bear, right?
Yeah,
So
right.
and there's all these studies with they show dieters all these different words, and the ones that they remember are cake and dessert, and it's just you fixate, right? And so
Yeah.
I think that cutting out a food group 100% for most people, it'll just lead to like an extra attraction to it, which can lead to binging, which leads to more feelings of shame, which leads to probably more inflammation, as opposed to saying, yeah, you can have McDonald's once a month and you'll
Yeah.
probably be fine. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't think there's any specific food that needs to be cut out. I agree with you. I think that we are at baseline at a homeostasis. We are at evenness at our body that our body wants to be at. Anytime we eat processed foods, and let's generalize it, anything we do something to our body that is artificial or extreme, let's say you go run a 200-mile race. That is extreme. Running is healthy, but 200 miles is very extreme. Anything that has been processed heavily, right? And you get and I'm going to keep picking on McDonald's till they sue me. If you get $1 burger that looks so beautiful and tastes that good, there's pretty much nothing in this world that is that natural, right? That removes you from your baseline middle ground homeostasis. And that is okay because the body is a beautiful thing. And I think it's very powerful. We underestimate it. It can return back to normal in time. But the more extreme things you do to it in a row in a short period of time, the harder it is to recover back to baseline. And the more divergent you will be from your true nature of your body. And so you can do a 200-mile race every once in a while. You can do these Ironman triathlons, but even those guys, they don't do it every day because there's only so much you can do to your body before it just needs a break. And I think the same thing comes with diet, is that I am all for doing a diet that fits your lifestyle, that makes you happy. I think everybody has a right to choose, and I don't think anybody should be told what to do or what not to do. But if you want to reduce the overall inflammation through diet, that is somewhere to start. And I think what's incredible now is there's more research to diet and more things are coming out. Not just the type of quality of food, but also how much you're eating with intermittent fasting. I think that is an incredible, incredible opportunity as well.
Are you pro intermittent fasting?
I am very pro intermittent fasting. Yes.
I am very against it. I call it a glorified eating disorder.
You call it what?
A glorified eating disorder.
Glorified eating disorder.
I'm very much in the camp of intuitive eating. Like you eat when you're hungry, you listen to your body's cues, you're in tune. IF is telling you you're hungry. Is it time? Drink some coffee. Like it's to me, but
Right.
we don't have to get into that.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting because I think it is a discussion. I think it's a discussion, right? I do not study intermittent fasting. That is not what I promote. I do not do endocrinology or GI, but I do think it is a type of dieting that is newer. I think we've gone through a lot of fads, which is the type of food and the quality. We talked about keto and paleo and gluten-free. And this new one is temporally based. It's not based on the quality of food, but it's okay, what if we just eat less amount of time and you can eat whatever you want? How does that
Yeah,
balance out?
that's a binge restrict cycle for me. Like,
That is
like
true. That is true. That is
yeah,
how it works.
yeah. I mean, yeah, yeah. To each their own. But to me, if someone tells me they're doing IF, I'm like, I'm worried.
Right. Worried
especially
about you.
especially when the point is to lose weight.
Mm,
It's like, yeah, no, we don't we don't have to get
yeah.
into it.
Right.
Um,
Now, I actually started it not to lose weight. I actually started it on accident. And so that is how I came across it, is that when I started working and seeing patients in internal medicine, I did not have time to eat between 5 in the morning and noon. I was too busy and I felt overwhelmed and stressed. And I didn't have coffee and I just had water. And so I did not intentionally start doing intermittent fasting, but I stumbled upon it and I've kept that schedule more or less. And I've fallen off since as my schedule became more relaxed. And as I have fallen off, I have heard it picking up in more and more circles. And so that's why I find it super interesting.
I'm just out of curiosity, were you hungry during those hours?
Now, that's a good question. I think maybe at first, but I was so adrenaline out that I did not feel hunger. It was at no point did I feel like I was missing something in that time. So I
Because
didn't tell
yeah,
myself no, which
because
is
I think
good.
that is intuitive eating. Like if I
Hmm.
had to work those hours, I would probably get hungry and I'd bring like a little bar or whatever, a
Hmm.
snack. But if you're not hungry and you eat when you're hungry, that's maybe you are keeping the IF schedule. Like most of us are, just by virtue of when we fall asleep and how many hours we sleep. Um,
Yeah.
like there's extremes, right? There's like an 8. I'm going to show how I do not know how to count. Yeah. So it's 24 hours in the day. Some are like, oh, you can have an 8-hour eating window. Some are like 4 hours, right? So
Hmm.
there's just different forms of it. And some of us are keeping IF just because we're asleep and then,
Yeah.
like getting ready, cooking, and then it's been 10 hours or whatever, 12 hours.
Hmm.
Um, but there's people who are like, and I was one of those people, like when I was not in the worst of my eating disorder, but coming out of it, I was like, all right, I'll try IF. And if my eating window was like start at 1 and it was 12, I'd be like, no, I have to wait. You know what I mean? And it's like that's when you're saying your body's saying, I'm hungry, and you're saying it's not time yet. Versus if you're saying, I'm so busy, da da da, okay, it's 12, now I'm hungry. Now I eat. But if you had, one day you get off earlier, it's 11 or it's the weekend, whatever. Like, would you have said, no, I have to wait?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good question. And I think that's it, not just for diet, but for any medication, also with topical creams. There are uh, ways that people like to go cold turkey. I think that phrase still applies, where you can go so extreme right away and you want your body to get to a goal. And so you force it into an unreasonable jump and state, an energy state. And I think that itself is so difficult and uh, going the wrong direction. I think it's difficult for the body to adjust like that. And I think we need to coax it into a lower or higher energy state with time. And so if I were to do any diet, and even now, is I don't think anything should be 100% off limits. I think if you feel hungry, you should absolutely do it. You have moments, you cannot predict what life throws at you. And so let's say you're doing IF and you have a rough morning, or I had mornings where some of my favorite patients would die and I needed something. I needed fresh air and I needed a banana and I needed something to eat. And there's nothing you could do in that moment to tell me that I need to stick to an IF schedule and that's how I'm going to get through the day. And so I think that is where we need to give ourselves some leeway. That being said, if you do that and you want to go in one direction of, let's say, IF or something else, then that's okay if you get there to a sustainable point, because I think the longer it takes you to get there and the more relaxing it is for your body, the more sustainable it is. I think there are people who do these 30-day cleanse all juice diets, and then you're not going to hold on to that diet for the rest of your life. So I don't see the point of it.
Your
Maybe I'll give
body's
you a
also
boost.
freaking out thinking it's starving. But
Right. And I think that's what they want to do, and that's the allure of it, where it's like, okay, I'm going to starve myself, and then you get to a state, but by those shows like The Biggest Loser, that majority of the contestants, they regain all the weight, and so
and
what's the
more,
point?
it kills your
More.
metabolism because your body's like, oh, okay, we need to hold on to everything because we might not get food. And there's a starvation experiment that was run in the late 40s. I'll put it in the show notes, but it was the American government was running this because when they were liberating Holocaust survivors, they were trying to figure out how to refeed people without causing damage, right? Because you're starved, you can't just faceplant into pie, even if you'd want to. So they did this with a bunch of they screened these young 20-something-year-old men. They didn't have any psychological problems. They were, good, healthy, and they gave them a diet of 1,200 calories. No, 1,400 calories. It was around 1,400 calories because I remember my fitness pal would tell me to eat 1,200 calories. So it was more. So it was telling me they were starving them by giving them 1,400 calories. And the men started, to lose weight. They started to fixate only on food. Some dropped out because it was too much. One of them started reading cookbooks, just became very fixated with food. And there's just evidence of like what starving your body does to you that it's just very wild to me that then you get a MyFitnessPal app telling you that you need to eat 1,200 calories, and like the benefit of it is, okay, I'll lose weight, but then what else is happening to my body? Is my hair falling out? Like, am I getting stress fractures because, like my bone density is shit? I forget where I was going with all of this. But yeah, so it's just, to me, it's like, there has to be a very solid, clear benefit to IF for me to say, all right, I think it merits like this dedication to get to it. Like you said, like, okay, if I'm hungry at 11, or maybe I worked out last night and I'm hungrier today. Like women, we go on our periods, we are hungrier. Like if you're flexible with it, that's great. But then if you're like saying, all right, but I need to like wean myself off of listening to my hunger cues so I can get to this goal, it's like, why? Not to me.
Yeah, and I think the hunger cues is really interesting because I imagine that at some point, so for me, I have always had a difficulty gaining weight. And I know that's not the common difficulty, but everybody's got their problems, and that's mine. And I think some would call it an ectomorph, and I shed weight very easily. And I would to like to fill out my clothes that I bought a year ago. And so I would like to maintain the weight that I have. And so when I eat, I rarely have hunger cues. And when I am working extra hard and when I am doing a lot of cardio, playing a lot of pickleball, I don't have any hunger cues. And so I need to remind myself that the body is still burning so much that I need to eat. So it's the opposite problem. And I cannot speak for somebody who is gaining a lot of weight, but from what my patients who are struggling with that and have asked me for weight loss, they will say that they eat without cues, and they eat because they are bored or they're watching TV or they are working and they're stressed out, and they'll try to eat. And so when they restrict themselves, it's more so to not to ignore hunger cues, but to ignore the tendency to eat regardless of the cues, with the absence of cues. And so in that sense, it would be more so like what you're saying, listen to your body more. And it's not necessarily IF, but it's more so intuition. intuitive eating, where
Mhm.
you only eat or restrict your eating to when you are hungry, or be more mindful of when you're hungry. And I think that's what a lot of these diets trend toward, is that they are making you mindful of what you're eating and what you're putting in your body. And I think that should be the ultimate goal of them. I don't think any of them should be adhered to strictly. But I think people get crazed about certain diets and they swear by them. And I rarely see that pan out well.
Right. Oh, and just to mention, it's the Minnesota starvation experiment. But the what I was going to say is, intuitive eating it's based on I'm forgetting the name. It's Evelyn Trebelin and another scientist. They wrote a book with intuitive eating. They've done studies, and definitely it's, eat when you're hungry, eat what you crave, but there is room for emotional eating. If you're at a birthday party and someone's like, do you want cake? And you're like, I'm kind of full, but like I kind of want this cake. Like it's not there's this fullness and hunger diet where it's like, what is your level of hunger? Is it over a 5? Then you can eat. It's a little bit more flexible. There is times when you're sad and eating chocolate makes you happy, but there is a whole chapter on how to cope with your emotions without food. And the point is not to take away food as a coping mechanism, because it can be a very healthy one. It's better than drugs or some drugs or than binge drinking alcohol. But it's saying, okay, what are other coping mechanisms you can add to your repertoire, right? So maybe sometimes you are sad and you eat chocolate, but now you also know that you can call a friend or that you can go for a walk. It's not so much saying you can't emotionally eat. It's saying there's other ways, like the people you're talking about, like they're bored, they're stressed. Okay, what can you do? Because food is good as a coping mechanism, but to an extent, right? It's not gonna make you feel that great, especially if you have diet culture in your brain saying this is bad while you're doing it. So yeah, that's what I was gonna say about that. Oof. We've gone so far from acne. But I did want to ask, because we got to the diet. Okay, what are some of the most common myths about acne that you would like to dispel or confirm? Part of it we talked about diet. There's also, like sweat on your face. Is that but like if I work out and I don't wash my face, like can that lead to acne?
That is a good question. So I think that leads to one of the most common myths that I deal with, which is, does dirtiness cause acne? No, you are not dirty when you have acne. And I think that is something we need to reinforce when we talk to our younger peers, is that it does not mean you are more oily. So when there are studies that look at the sebum or the sweat production of acne patients and non-acne patients. And the amount of sweat produced by both acne and non-acne people is the same. The quality of the sweat is different, but the amount is the same. And so you are not oily when you have more acne, and you are also not dirty. So a lot of my skin of color patients, they wipe their skin with alcohol pads because they believe that is what's causing their rashes and their acne, because they're dirty. And that is a common misconception. And it's very harmful because it's stripping away the body as soon as you put alcohol over your face or any part of your skin. And so that shouldn't be happening. So that is the number one myth that I would love to dispel. And I think we can go about that by doing our normal cleansers to make us feel comfortable that we are cleaning our face
Not
enough.
foaming cleansers.
Not foaming cleansers, also not bars of soap. We're not using soap on our face, but nice cleansers that are very easy. They don't have to be expensive, and not exfoliating cleansers all the time. It's just very easy, gentle cleansers. And once or twice a day is plenty. More than that is unnecessary, even if you have acne. Now, if you have acne, the type of cleansers you use can involve glycolic acid, salicylic acid mixed in, because that will help other parts of the acne formation. Not the cleanliness, but the stickiness of the dead skin that we're talking about that clogs the pores, that helps with that. It helps with the skin turnover. It helps with these other factors that have nothing to do with how dirty you are, because you can go roll around in mud or a garbage can. That doesn't mean you're going to get acne. And so
Garbage can.
I promise you, when you wake up in the morning and you sweat a little bit, or if you went and worked out a little bit and you came back and you're sweaty, that's not what's going to give you acne. It could maybe contribute to it, but that's not your major worry.
Okay. I do want to. How are we on time? Can we do a listener question?
We absolutely can. I am going to
Okay.
plug in my computer.
Okay. Oh, we're gonna do one more question about acne and then go to a listener question. Okay. We talked about this. Yeah. Okay. We talked about this, I think, in the first episode. There's a link between depression and acne. I know we talked about anxiety causing acne, but what about acne causing depression? What are those studies? What do they say?
That's a really good question. So all the studies show that there's a huge correlation between acne and depression and anxiety. Up to 3 times of an increase in especially pubertal kids and older patients, much older patients, talking about 40s, who have acne, they will have up to a 3 times higher rate of depression and anxiety. And so, like we said, nothing's in a vacuum. The depression and anxiety can cause the acne, or it can go the other way around. And what we've seen lately is that the anxiety in the American population, especially, is increasing rapidly. It's increasing amongst teens. It's also increasing amongst 30-year-olds and 40-year-olds. Some of these younger generations that are actively working or entering the workforce, they have so much pressure. They are surrounded by social media. The anxiety is going through the roof. So is our acne. Our acne rates have been increasing, even though our lives have gotten easier, even though we have less labor and dirtiness, and we have more concentration and availability of all these cleansers, yet our acne is going up. And so there's a huge correlation with how we are feeling psychologically and emotionally.
That is something that I've been thinking about a lot as, a millennial who's unemployed. That, millennials are supposed to be the first generation in general that will not out earn their parents, right? That our parents made more money than their parents. Kind of, there was this upward social mobility. That social mobility is going down, especially in American England. It was always pretty limited, but generally, I am less likely to make more money than my mom, right? Because we're women, and that's how they compare. So I see how that's very stressful. I think the Gen Zs, whom I love, grew up with social media, like you said. The idea that humans have been evolving for thousands of years, millions, I don't know, but thousands of years to communicate with other humans face to face. And now I don't think our brains had the thousands of years to develop that they needed to understand that when you're putting something on TikTok, it's reaching millions of people. Like, I don't think we get it. I think we understand that that's happening in a very logical way, but the structure of our brain isn't reconnecting as fast as the internet is connecting all of us, is how I think. So I see how that can lead to more stress, more acne. But then I think about, older generations, say boomers, who people love to shit on, but they were growing up with the idea of like a nuclear holocaust, as a possibility. Some, like, our grandparents like fought in world wars. I don't know. It's just, I don't understand why we're the most stressed out when, like you said, like, I live a pretty comfortable life, even if I'm unemployed. I don't need to go fight in the trenches. So I'm just like so confused. Like, that there was nuclear warfare, now it's environmental catastrophe. Why are we more stressed out than our
That
fathers?
that that is an incredible point, and I would love to see the rates of acne during war times, and I think that's a beautiful point you make. You know, I can't think of I can't help but think of two theories. One is that we do not appreciate the amount of stress that other people go through nowadays because we have such good lives and we have first world problems where every little thing is so stressful. And so we are blowing up small things. And so our tolerance for stress is much lower. And two is that our stress, like you said, with social media, reaches so many people. We are processing so much more information that our stress changes on a minute to minute basis. And that is so erratic. Versus when you are in wartime, you appreciate that you have food on your table, you have a shelter, you didn't get bombed today, you're happy, and you're content, your family is safe. And that is the only stress you're worried about. And until that changes, you are moving at a pretty low functioning, low, also low ecstatic or low highs, right? And low lows, sorry, high lows. And so you're not too far away from baseline. But here, I think we're so used to having a wonderful night out and drinking or going to a concert, and then you're freaking out because you didn't get enough likes on social media, and it can all happen within 3 hours. And so it can be so erratic. I can't help but think that that contributes to it. And I have a profound appreciation for time and frequency and how we function. And I truly believe that if you go to how much the skin or and how much the body and the mind is stressed on a minute to minute basis, we can really narrow down how you can quantify stress. You can narrow down how much stress your body and your persona believes you are experiencing, because you are experiencing so much more so in such a short amount of time. And that's what comes to mind. I think what's super interesting, which I had no idea, is that so millennials are going to make less than boomers or their parents.
Yep.
So why is that? Why has that structure
Um,
occurred?
it's like systemic issues, right? That, for example, you used to not really need, I mean, I would say, and this is up for debate, according to the studies that I've seen, is it has a lot to do with unions going down. Um, just like having a job doesn't really guarantee a lot for anyone. You could, in our boomer generation, they could get jobs without having a college degree and like be okay. Um, Now you get a college degree that's almost worthless. There's the increase in the price of getting that college degree. So now people have student debt. Like, not to be bragging, but I have an undergrad degree from Columbia University, a master's degree from Stanford, and I can't find a job. You know what I mean? So it's just, people are like way more educated. They spend more on these degrees. They don't guarantee anything anymore. And now you have the rise of like service jobs that are poorly paying. And so it, the increase in the price of a house, like it's just, everything is just so much more skewed that like can you buy a house right now? Like, can you buy a house? Like,
Absolutely not.
right, me neither. Like, I no, I can't even get into a car accident. But it's just like our parents could, it was just the way that things were structured in the economy. And I'm just gonna sound dumb if I talk about like globalization and super capitalism, but that is what it is. That you have
Yeah.
Jeff Bezos having billions of dollars and Amazon workers make minimum wage, and people have to have two minimum wage jobs to make ends meet. So as a group, millennials, that will happen. And there's exceptions. My sister. But like, as a group in general, that's the way the trend is going.
I remember seeing a meme that I thought was very funny, where they said that most people, which is true, there's a survey that a lot of people, when they talk about eating the rich and how there should be a dissolution of a lot of these the structure that is in place for money, that in their heads they're thinking about millionaires, but they aren't upset about billionaires. And there was a meme that said, you guys aren't upset about billionaires because you think there's a chance that you could become one.
That's the
And I
American
think
dream. Yeah.
it's the American dream. And I have a friend whose little brother is his idea, his goal is to become a billionaire. And I think that is a young dream. I think when you're a kid, you can have those kind of dreams, but I don't think that should be the goal of anyone's life, is to accumulate so much wealth, because ultimately it's a pie and you're taking it away. And how much do you
I
need?
just want to have
So
so much wealth that I could feed the planet, but I choose not to. No, I mean, I'm a big Bernie bro or whatever, Hispanic woman who's a Bernie bro, but I don't think billionaires should exist. They don't need it. Like it shouldn't. Like, imagine if we took that money and like put it into our healthcare system or education. I mean, my God. But people love to Jeff Bezos, on the comments, or Elon Musk or whatever. It's ridiculous, but it's because they have this idea that they could one day be that person. But like,
one day,
look in the mirror, guys. You're not gonna be billionaires.
what did you mean? Or I'd love to hear more when you were talking about us affecting so many people on social media, where our brains are processing only so fast and we're reaching millions of people so much faster.
I guess my idea is that 30 years ago, you couldn't go viral, right? And I love Twitter. I have like barely 100 followers, but it's different for me to think of a joke and text it to my sister. We texting, or put it on Twitter and then suddenly it gets 1 million likes. Like, I don't think my brain has the capacity to understand what that means. Like, I think people's social networks for, thousands of years was like pretty limited. So I think you can say, oh, 1 million people liked my tweet, but I don't think you understand that 1 million like individual people saw that tweet and liked it. So I think you can put a joke on Twitter and people like, and you're like, oh my God, I'm so funny. But you could also tweet like something about your depression, and then people retweet it and comment about it and comment below it. And I don't, you know what I mean? Like, it's just this weird feedback that I don't think our brains can really process, that we used to be able to process like maybe 100 people if you're giving a speech. Like, but you're not seeing these faces anymore. Like, 1 million, I don't know what that means. Like 1 million people. And you see these tweets that have like 3 million likes. It's crazy. Like, I don't know. I don't think my brain can understand what that means. Like, spread over the globe, like, or just no. Like, what does that mean?
Absolutely nuts. The butterfly effect, where butterfly lands somewhere and causes a ripple in the universe, and now you have so many.
I bet our brains are thinking, I've been hurt by 3 million people. Like, wait, what? Like, that's so crazy to me. And like, tweet is one thing, but then if you're on TikTok and you put your face on it and people, I mean, it's just wild to me. I was just like, what is the internet?
I can't help but think that a lot of stereotypes and stigmas and a lot of the structure that's in place is emphasized and ingrained so much more, because normally when we receive something from people without social media, we have context around the person. We know where they're from, we know in what capacity they're related to us. But with somebody who's tweeting something and you just see a picture, and as a, let's say, young skin of color kid, you think, okay, well, this person's in charge and they're white and they have power, and they say something, you think that is correct, or you think that is true. And that happens on a day-to-day basis in person, right? You think people of authority and people of other races or creeds, they have more power over you. But if you have that happening on a daily basis and it's so easy to have access to that, I think it's going to make things a lot worse, and it could easily increase our stress because you don't have context around that. You have 3 million people liking it, and so you see that and you say, okay, this must be correct if 3 million people think it's a good thing.
Right. Yeah, no, and I mean, you touch on something that stereotypes they're helpful to process information. That's why they exist. Like evolutionary wise, that's why we have stereotypes, because you get a lot of information thrown at you and you need to be able to process it quickly. They're not helpful because a lot of times they make you, if you're a cop, they make you shoot a Black person. Like they're just not accurate, and you shouldn't act based on stereotypes. But like your brain is using stereotypes the way that it, process everything else. You can't do that much information. So yeah, just seeing the word 3 million, if there's a bandwagon effect that says, your peers are jumping off a bridge and you want to jump off a bridge to talk about that. But like now you're seeing it, and it's the same thing, you put laugh tracks on a sitcom because if you hear other people laughing, you will laugh too. So you're just more likely to agree with whatever went viral. And not to, but like we'll get back to the listener question. But the things that get retweeted or read TikTok, liked on TikTok, they're very extreme. Like something that's nuanced and something that's okay. You want to lose weight, diet and exercise. That's very boring. They don't get retweeted. So if someone's saying, the Israeli and Palestinian conflict, someone says something very measured, this is this is that, this is why I think these people are good and these people are good and this is what's bad. It's not going to get retweets. What gets retweets is, this is horrible, this needs to stop. It's the extreme. So there's all these studies on like the polarization of attitudes in America and in the world, and it has to do with a lot of things, but part of it is the internet.
And social media creates these bubbles, these echo chambers that we talk to each other and people who are like-minded, and yeah, it gets retweeted. Yeah, absolutely. And I, like you were saying, I don't think we process how many people listen to us. Influencers, I think that is mind-boggling, how you look at some of these people and they have 750,000 followers, and they're not a celebrity, right? I understand if you're a celebrity in your movie and literally 10, 20 million people saw you and now 1 million people follow you. I get that. But there's people grassroots who have collected hundreds of thousands of followers, which is absolutely incredible. And I'm sure they do some cool things. And I don't use social media
or have a great ass,
figure out the pattern. Yeah, or let's say they have a great body, and does that define beauty now? If you have more followers, are you more beautiful? Is that how we do it? And there's a discussion about Instagram is concentrated on the ass, right? And there's less concentration on the boobs because it's more aesthetic, right? And so now is beauty shifting towards the lower half of the body?
Instagram will censor boobs.
Oh, is that what it is?
Well, the nipples for sure, but you're not gonna show your ass crack. So it might be that you can't, like, you can show your ass more on Instagram with it, but no.
And now that's more desirable.
Yeah, who was talking about this? I was listening. How white people in like the 90s were more of like boob people. Like everyone was obsessed with boobs. Boobs were the thing. Big boobs, boobs. And then, like kind of like the Kim Kardashian people started coming out that, Kim Kardashian sort of takes her aesthetic from Black women. And then like it became ass. And now everyone's like all about asses. And it's just so, it's so weird to me that coincided with Instagram.
Yeah, it makes sense when you have constant shifts in beauty, and I think it's all societally driven. And when you have Instagram, where that is what you build your body for in a lot of cases, and you have these aspiring models, that now drives the aesthetic that you look for, rather than being healthy or rather than being what you find attractive. You're going to have to find the ass attractive if you are heavily involved in Instagram, whether you
I wonder if it went
whatever side of the spectrum you are.
Yeah. Boobs, ass, and then personality one day.
Yeah.
Brains. I'm kidding.
Twitter.
There's a lot of butts on Twitter.
Oh, are there? Twitter is the one social media among many social medias that I have not tried, but
Oh, really?
I always find it super interesting.
I'm obsessed. I've been sending you like, look at this thread.
Yeah,
But
but you send it through Instagram, right? Aren't there tweets that are captured, or do you screenshot them?
Some, yeah.
Okay.
But I think I screenshot it just because I didn't want to make you open the app. And I'll send you some tweets from the app. You can look at them.
Yeah, I actually downloaded the app. I've yet to register, but I've downloaded it, so I want to try it. Okay, listener question.
Okay, listener question. And I will say that this was sent in Spanish, and I translated it. So it might sound a little bit awkward, but okay. It says, "Hello, I'm a Mexican woman, 33 years old, and I have noticed I get spots." Is that the right word to use? Like, so in Spanish we call it manchas.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, you deal with Hispanic people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they say manchas? Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so it's spots?
Absolutely. Manchas or granitos.
Okay, this is manchas.
Whether it's manchas, when they have spots, they that's what they call them. But when they have more like pebbles or balls, that would be granitos. Okay. And those are the two differentiations I've heard.
Okay, which I also think it's funny that manchas means spots, which, like a spotted dog, but it also means stain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of having like this value judgment on like what's on your face if you say you have stains on your face. But anyway, okay. Hello, I'm a Mexican woman, 33 years old, and I have noticed I get spots, usually after getting pimples, and they take longer to disappear. And I have never used anything for skin spots because they used to disappear on their own with time. My routine starts out by washing my face with liquid soap, CeraVe. Okay. After astringent or micellar water, within a dry face, I use vitamin C. Then after moisturizing gel and sunscreen at the end. Am I doing something wrong? I would like to know if this same routine applies at night. Most importantly, what can I use for spots? And of course, how to prevent wrinkles. There are lots of brands out there that I feel promise things that aren't true. Nothing better than to listen to experts on the subject and not over-medicate my skin. What would be the recommendations of the dermatologist, Kumar? Thank you. And we're going to call her Eva.
Eva, a great question. And thank you for listening and sending it in. I think what Isabel was saying about manchitas or manchas is so interesting that it also means stain. I did not know that, but it alludes to what we were discussing before, how there are true scars and then there's hyperpigmentation, which we call scars. And when you have PTSD or you have an emotionally abusive relationship, you call those scars, right? Anything that has left a mark on you, you would call a scar or a stain. And you have to carry that with you long after the inflammation or the damage has been done. And so I think that is a wonderful piece of language that shows how true that is across all cultures. So when you are darker skinned and you have any type of inflammation, whether it be acne, eczema, psoriasis, or anything else, afterwards, when that goes away, you will have a mancha or a stain or hyperpigmentation, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, or PIH for short. And unfortunately, it's very difficult to get rid of that. It lasts for months and months and months. The darker you are, the longer it can last. You can use certain spot treatments like hydroquinone, which is a bleaching agent. You can use azelaic acid, which will lighten up the whole area. Or you can use things like what you've been using already, vitamin C cleansers, a normal routine that will help the overall health of the skin. Now, the best thing that you have not tried, it seems like, that I would love for you to include is a retinol. And like we said, there's over-the-counter retinol, which is an easy approach. It's often more expensive than the prescription, but it's easy to get and it's easy to use because it is not that strong. It is great. It'll prevent the acne, which is our goal, because then if you prevent the acne, you won't get the spots afterwards. It'll also reduce the amount of inflammation in your skin, and it'll create overall healthiness. I would always recommend a prescription strength retinoid. So tretinoin is great to start. An over-the-counter version of a prescription that has just become over-the-counter in recent years is Differin or adapalene. You can get that at any store or online. And that is much stronger than a retinoid, and it is easy to put on. You don't need a dermatologist to help you through it. It can cause irritation, so it helps to have one, but you do not need other help. And it's often much, much cheaper than the retinols you're going to find online, and it's much stronger. So that's a good place to start, and I would love to see you in person if you'd like to come. I can prescribe you something once we look at your skin, but I would lean towards a prescription strength retinoid, either Differin, adapalene, or tretinoin. I also love Tazorac. That's something that you can work towards, but those are something that we can talk about next time. So that's something that you should add to your regimen, because not only will that help with acne, it'll prevent PIH. It'll also help the evenness of your skin tone. So the entire face will look better, and it's to be used everywhere. It's not a spot treatment. And even better is that it is the only proven substance and FDA approved for anti-aging. So it's going to help you with wrinkles.
Okay.
So it is all in one, absolutely incredible.
Like, right. One question. So you said they were bleaching the skin. Is that like actual, like, is that as bad as it sounds really harsh? Like,
it does sound very harsh. And so what has happened in the past is that on the black market, hydroquinone has been sold in high concentrations, and it has bleached the skin to the point where it's disfigured people. It has caused color change. It's also caused ochronosis, which is a paradoxical darkening of the skin, a blue tint that is pretty much permanent staining. And that's what I would call staining. It's permanent. That is in rare cases, also with extremely high concentrations. Right now, there is a bill that has just been passed in the States where you can no longer get hydroquinone over the counter. You used to be able to get it in very small percentages because it is pretty safe in small percentages. You can still get it by prescription, and you can use it as spot treatment or over the entire face. And it is a lightening agent where it is a bleach, but it won't cause damage. It'll just help with the underlying process of melanin formation. So that is a wonderful cream that can be used for a few months at a time. And you could take a break if you want to be extra safe at lower concentrations, and it'll help with overall lightening. It will not help you, unfortunately, with the acne. So the tretinoin will do all in one. The other cream that we talked about was azelaic acid. It is actually derived from a common condition we get on our skin called tinea versicolor, pityriasis versicolor. And they extracted that and they made a wonderful cream that everyone loves. And it helps with redness in lighter skinned people, and it helps with acne, and it helps with PIH. And so that is something you can get over the counter in smaller concentrations, or you can get via prescription. And I personally have used it. I think it is a wonderful cream. It's easy to approach. It doesn't hurt. And it is something that you can try tomorrow.
okay. That's a lot of different things that Eva can try. So
absolutely. A lot of different things Eva can try. Eva, I think overall your current routine is pretty darn good. I think it was facial cleanser, micellar water, vitamin C, and anything else?
Moisturizing and sunscreen, which
is great. Yeah, I'd continue all of that. I'd continue all that. So one other thing that I would add, which we should talk about next time, is your sunscreen. You want to make sure that it is a mineral sunscreen that is tinted.
Okay, we'll talk more because I'm writing it down.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we should definitely do a whole episode on SPF because I hear it's like the main thing that we have to do. But then there's also, the same man who uses the bar of soap, I told him he should wear SPF. And we live in San Francisco. It's pretty cloudy. And he was like, no, the sun isn't out. But it's out, right? Okay, well,
It's out.
I was like, I'm gonna put it on because there is sunlight, but we'll talk more about that.
All right, I'm excited.
All right. Thank you for answering that. And we're gonna close this out. I'm gonna say thank you all for listening. Check out soon our YouTube, where we'll be posting the full episodes. Other than that, keep listening, rate, review, and subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen. And send in your questions to getintoyourskindpod@gmail.com and follow at getintoyourskindpod on Instagram. All right. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Send in your questions. Good luck, Ava.